In 2010, retail food packaging grew at about 3% globally. Now, that's similar to what we saw in 2009, again about 3%. 2007, 2008, that was down to about 2%, and that was the height of the recession. In value terms, in 2010, we see growth at about 1.7%, so much lower, but still positive, as consumers are still looking for value-add products and still enabling growth despite a lot of brand owners pushing the economy option through buy one, get one free and other economy options. One way that brand owners are aiming to add more value to their product and therefore increase margins is by targeting particular demographics. And one interesting demographic that we see at the moment is Generation Z, or the tweens and teens. So that's 9 to 12-year-olds, 13 to 18-year-olds. And one of the reasons these are quite interesting is simply because they're a very large group. They currently account for 21% of global population, the biggest demographic group there is. And so clearly an ideal target group for brand owners. So how do we aim to get to this group? Well, their particular sort of psychological profile, if you wish, is of individualistic, tech-savvy consumers. This is the first group who've grown up with iPhones, with computers, and with smart, intelligent things being an everyday part of their life. So one marketing tactic is to use packaging that merely reflects that kind of interactive lifestyle. And one thing we see, for example, is the launch by Cadbury's in Egypt of the SMS chocolate bar, which has printed on it things similar to text messages like hello and I love you, and things that you might send as a text message. These are not interactive, but they replicate something that consumer group is familiar with. But there are more interesting, more intelligent ways that you can interact with consumers through that virtual sphere. So what we're seeing is increasingly the use of 2D barcodes, things like QR codes. Earlier this year in America for candy, we saw the use of a 2D barcode that took consumers directly through to its Twitter and its Facebook site. So using the packaging not just to reflect the kind of social networking that their client base takes part in, but actually to be an interface to take people through. And increasingly, marketeers are realizing that social networking is the only way that really you're going to get through to these young consumers. It's not just young consumers who are using these 2D barcodes. So for example, one area where we see them being used is where consumers really want to see more information. And one product that is great for this is wine, for example, where consumers want to know the region, what foods it will go with, etc. So you can get apps that you simply take a picture of the wine bottle, it'll take you through to information such as price comparison websites and online reviews, but that really takes the control out of the producer and into the hands of this service provider. And obviously as a producer, that could hurt your sales if people see that perhaps the item is more expensive than it would be elsewhere, or there's a bad online review. However, using a QR code instantly gives you that link to the consumer and gives you control. So when the consumer scans on that, they get taken through to the information that you want them to see, and therefore you can build the brand story and that you want them to see rather than something that could damage you. Another personality trait that the 1.4 million Generation Z consumers have is in being individualistic. And obviously food is something that touches you in a personal way, and that's why brand owners use phrases such as homemade, just like mum used to make, in order to sort of feed on that kind of emotion. But essentially these are not individualized products, but increasingly tying in with the fact that people are buying more stuff online, we're seeing the offering of tailored products such as a granola in the US, where you can choose the ingredients you want in it and it's mixed personally for you. And M&Ms, where we now see you can have them printed with messages or pictures to customize them to your own personal use. And now that has moved over into the packaging as well. So Wrigley's, again in the US for Extra, have decided to launch a personalizable pack. So you go online, you fill in the pictures and the details you want, and they produce a pack that's targeted specifically at you. And whilst this is very high end at the moment, and obviously retails at a much higher price than you would at the store, with the growth of digital printing and the growth of online retailing, it can't be long before we see that really permeating the food market. Another trait that Generation Z have are they are ethically minded and fair-minded, so they're more social and more accepting of differences around them. But one way that translates into their purchasing habits is they're more willing to accept environmentally sustainable and green packaging. So what we've seen in the past is in foods, really the kind of biodegradable and recyclable packaging, particularly where it's been positioned for the consumer, has really been focused on things like organic produce, where the consumer is perhaps preconditioned to want to have that kind of value add on their packaging. branding. But with Generation Z, they're not wanting to compromise on the quality of their products or the taste profile, and they're still wanting the kind of high-end branded goods that you would expect not really to have the same profile as an organic produce. But we're seeing, for example, with Coca-Cola, their plant bottle, replacing 30% of the PET with a plant-based PET, again, to reduce their CO2 footprint and to appeal to that kind of consumer. And we saw in the US the Lay's bag going to a biodegradable, compostable bag. Admittedly, that was withdrawn from the market because of loud noise issues, but they've relaunched that in a quieter format, and that's getting great uptake. And this is for a product, a snack that you wouldn't expect there to be a really big pull for an environmentally sustainable solution. And yet we're seeing it coming into the market because people want both their branded, high taste end products, but they're also wanting their sustainable lifestyle feelings satisfied. So when thinking about these Generation Z consumers, it's tempting to think of these, particularly the ones who are internet savvy and using internet computing, to be the Western consumers. But that would be a mistake, particularly if you think that by 2020, over half of all internet users are going to be based in Asia Pacific. So this really stands out as an opportunity globally.